3 weeks later, and it's time for the big finish. Zidane's France have stormed to the final.
Him again, it's France again.
Now they face the Playboys from Italy, who took on the host and held their nerve. But can they hold Zidane?
Glorious to behold.
Join Des and the team for the final. It's France v Italy, tomorrow at 6 on ITV.
Now, the passion, the euphoria, the talent, the technique. On the pitch and behind the scenes, results, news and interviews in world football.
World football in association with Western Union Money Transfer. This week, can Palmeiras of Brazil successfully defend their Copa Libertadores title? Or will Carlos Bianchi's Boca Juniors spoil the party? Already world champions of the women's game, the United States are setting their sights on Olympic gold later this year. We check out their preparations in Australia. And 3 years after fleeing war-torn Yugoslavia for Australia, Ivan Ergic has become the NSL's latest hot property. Could he be set for a big money return to Europe?
It was the big one in South American football recently. Palmeiras of Brazil took on Argentina's Boca Juniors in the final of the Copa Libertadores. Palmeiras had scraped past arch-rivals Corinthians in what was a nerve-wracking semi-final. 4-3 down from the first leg, Palmeiras won the return 3-2, leaving the two sides tied 6 apiece on aggregate, and that led to a dramatic penalty shootout. Coach Luis Felipe Scolari had masterminded another famous victory, and title holders Palmeiras were through to the final. But they would face possibly their toughest task yet in Buenos Aires. It was a case of out of the frying pan into the fire as Palmeiras travelled to Argentina for the first leg of the final against Boca. There would clearly be no quarter asked or given in Boca's intimidating Chocolate Box Stadium. Boca had won their previous 6 games in the tournament here, scoring an impressive 24 goals along the way. This was to be an explosive encounter, with Brazilian and Argentine clubs pitted against each other in the final for the first time in 6 years. The atmosphere was electric as Palmeiras took to the field. Boca had not won the Copa Libertadores for 22 years, but their coach Carlos Bianchi remained the calm eye in the centre of the storm. His side taking the lead 22 minutes in, Christian Jimenez heading the ball back at the far post for an unmarked Rodolfo Ruberena to nod in from close range. The advantage wasn't to last long though. Palmeiras equalising from their first real chance 2 minutes before half-time. Alex swinging in a free kick from the right, and it was Peña who rose above a static defence to head home and make it 1-1 at the break. It looked like Scolari had the upper hand, particularly 3 minutes into the second half when Palmeiras nearly took the lead. Alex hitting the bar with another wickedly curving free kick. Inches lower, and Boca's keeper Oscar Cordoba would have had no chance. But Palmeiras were left to rue the missed opportunity just after the hour. Boca's fullback Ruberena again left unmarked to tap home. This time, it had been Jorge Bermudez who was the supplier, the captain leading by example. Boca's fans could have been forgiven for thinking this was going to be their night. But 11 minutes later, Christian Traverso was booked for a moment of madness, which would ultimately lead to Palmeiras drawing level. With Junior going nowhere, Traverso cut across the Palmeiras playmaker and slapped him on the forehead. He was booked for his trouble, and the incident was to change the flow of the game back in the visitors' favour. Scolari sensed a chance for Palmeiras to get one over on the old enemy. And the subsequent free kick was worked down the left flank to Uller, who cut inside and scored with a fierce low drive. Scolari understandably delighted. Boca nearly gained themselves a slender lead for the return leg, but Barros Schelotto fired his shot narrowly over the bar. So the first leg ended 2-2, but any Palmeiras celebrations were short-lived. Bianchi and his team were far from finished. They travelled to Sao Paulo in belligerent mood, and in the second leg, Boca's Colombian keeper Oscar Cordoba was the most stubborn of their heroes. A goalless draw, the game went to penalties, and Cordoba saved from his compatriot Faustino Asprilla and Roque Junior to ensure Boca's hard-fought victory. So, Bianchi has managed to emulate his rival Scolari by winning the title with two different clubs. Boca Juniors are back to their best. They're champions for the third time in their history.
Ivan Ergic has a gift. The gift he possesses has excited a lot of people in Australia. From his birthplace in Yugoslavia to his adopted home in Perth, everyone, it seems, is waxing lyrical about one of the hottest properties in Australia's National Soccer League. His coach at the Perth Oval is equally enthusiastic.
His skills are brilliant, and he has speed. He's very, very fast, and that's interesting for international soccer. And there are a lot of agents around him. They wanted to sign him, but it's more important to improve his tactical and technical skills for the future. But I think he will be a great player.
Aged only 19, Ergic has been one of the major success stories in Australia this season. His form had been instrumental in helping Perth Glory to reach this season's NSL Grand Final, which they ultimately lost. But having only escaped the troubles in his native Yugoslavia in 1997, the young midfielder has enjoyed a remarkable 3 years since his arrival.
He was playing up in Carnarvon, which is a fairway, as you know, fairway north of Perth. A very, very avid supporter wrote to us and informing us about young Ivan. We monitored him for a few weeks and then a few months, and he eventually came down and played in a country championship down here in Perth. We went down and watched Ivan, and he performed exceptionally well. And immediately you could see that he had talent and a great potential.
Now settled in the Western Australian capital, life at first for Ergic on his arrival from Europe was somewhat different. In contrast to the busy metropolis that is Perth, Ergic found himself 800 kilometres away from the Perth Oval in Carnarvon, a town not exactly known for its devotion to football, as Ivan soon discovered for himself.
I had relatives up in Carnarvon, and you know, that was the only place we could go to, really, you know, and I was a bit disappointed, to tell you the truth, because there was no soccer up there, and I was like, oh yeah, what do I come here for?
Luckily, the few football fans living in Carnarvon recognised in Ergic a player of genuine potential. Within a year, and with the aid of a sponsorship deal and the backing of his parents, he found himself preparing to join one of the most prestigious sporting academies in the world, the Australian Institute of Sport.
I played for a Western Australian country team, and from there I went to the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra, and obviously people from Perth Glory knew that I was Carnarvon boy from Western Australia, you know, so they kept an eye on me, and you know, that's how I got to Perth. And I always wanted to play for Perth Glory, you know, because it's one of the greatest clubs, probably the best club in Australia.
It didn't take long for Perth Glory to recognise that in Ivan Ergic, they possessed probably the best young footballer in the country. Unfortunately for the club, even in a nation as big as Australia, news travels fast. And before long, a host of major European clubs were taking an interest in Ivan. But it's a measure of his professionalism and maturity that he remains unaffected by all the attention thrust upon him, as club officials are keen to point out.
He's a very, very sensible young man. He's taken a lot of advice from his coaches. The recommendation from Bernd Stanger, our senior coach, is that Ivan stay here for another year or two, even though we have received some substantial offers from overseas. Stay with the club, get a regular spot in the senior team, and then when you've learned from the coach and from the players, you'll be mature enough to go overseas.
Success, though, has brought Ivan one dilemma. His Yugoslav roots and his newly gained Australian passport qualify him to play for both countries.
There's been a lot of talk of me, playing for Yugoslavia now, but, I just couldn't do it, especially after, Canberra and the Institute. I mean, Australia's given me everything, and just, it wouldn't be right for me to go to play for another country now, and especially like with all my friends at the Institute and that, I just couldn't play against them,
Australian footballers have started to shine brightly in Europe in recent times. When Ivan Ergic makes his inevitable move there, he may just become the biggest star of them all.
Still to come on World Football, 3 years on from their handover from British to Chinese rule, we check out the game in Hong Kong.
And as they prepare for their quest for Olympic gold, we catch up with the champions of the world in the women's game, the United States.
The phone bar is fast and fun, and it's the easiest way to talk to exciting new people. You can swap messages or connect live for a private chat with anyone in the bar you like the sound of. With up to 240 people on the line right now, you're sure to find someone to interest you. Give it a try now and find out for yourself on 09069 121 161. That's 09069 121 161.
Good afternoon, British Gas. I'm here to do the landlord safety inspection. As you can see, part of the outer floor is blocked with all this ivy. If there's a safety issue, a definite safety issue, we have to make the landlord and tenant aware of that. That's a brilliant pass, is that? So that's burning efficiently now. That's another tick on the form. Boiler working safely. I mean, I'd like to have that under my belt. I'd like to say that I have saved a few lives, but yeah, I'm sure we have. If you have any problems as well, just give us a ring.
Those who once looked down their noses at women's football are now starting to sit up and take notice. Thanks in no small part to the current world champions, the USA, the game has never been bigger.
You can't really describe the feeling that we had when we won the World Cup in front of 93,000 people in Pasadena. It was just, I mean, we looked around. I didn't really even notice the crowd till after the game, and you looked around and everyone is standing and just screaming for the United States. And that was probably the most incredible feeling I've ever had.
Get your picture on the cover of Sports Illustrated and you know you've made it. The World Cup made the players stars overnight, in particular Mia Hamm. Named the most recognized female athlete in the States, she's the golden girl of the American game.
We just go out there and play and as hard as we can and represent the game to the best that we can. But the opportunity to play in front of those crowds, it's absolutely overpowering. I think as a team we still feel there's so much yet to accomplish, but we're headed in the right direction, and I'm excited about the future for these young girls because we owe a lot of our future to the female athletes out there, but I think the future for them is extremely bright.
The squad were in Sydney, Australia recently for the inaugural Pacific Cup, a tournament seen as a useful warm-up for the Olympic Games later this year. With several of the top teams in opposition, it was a case of no pain, no gain. But the tournament started badly for the USA with a 1-0 defeat at the hands of World Cup runners-up China. The winner coming from the penalty spot in the dying minutes.
It always seems to come down to the last minute with China, you know, wherever we're playing them, here in Australia or back in the States or in China itself. So, you know, a loss for us is something we look at and think, you know, take very seriously, of course, and realize, though, it's not the Olympics right now. We got some things we need to work on, but I think it's good for us because it kind of makes you stop and reflect and say, okay, what do we need to do to get better, and what's the next step we need to take? So, you know, you can always find so many positives out of a loss as long as you take care of them come September.
This methodical approach has been brought in by April Heinrichs. April used to captain the team, and her last game was the 1991 World Cup final win over Norway. Despite being current world champions, complacency is not an issue.
I would say that we can only go up from here. You know, if we're going backwards and becoming worse players and a worse team, then we've really got something wrong. I feel like we can go forward. We can become a better team.
April took over as coach in January, and having been involved in the game for such a long time, settling into her new role was relatively easy, and she certainly has the respect of the players.
She was our first captain way back when, way back, I always tell her. So, you know, a lot of the same principles that she brought as a player and as a captain, she brings as a coach. So it was a real smooth transition. She's doing a fantastic job.
Which was emphasized in dramatic fashion when the USA bounced back from defeat against China to thrash neighbors Canada in their next game. (9-1), the final score.
Team played great tonight. I mean, the rhythm out there was phenomenal. We had some absolutely unbelievable play by most of the players out there. I mean, you know, Cindy Parlow today, Tiffany Milbritt. I think Julie gave us a great rhythm in the midfield. And then the reserves that came in the second half, there was no letdown. And that's what we want, because we talk about winning the Olympics, and it's not just going to be one player, it's the entire team. And I think you saw a great performance by the entire team.
3 subsequent wins and a shock defeat for China, amazingly by Canada, gave the USA the title. The Olympic goal, though, will be a lot harder to achieve. The group looks formidable. With the top 2 going through, one of the game's big 3 will be disappointed.
We truly believe that if we're going to win an Olympic gold medal, we have to be able to beat any team. Because before the draw occurred, there's 7 teams besides ourselves. We'd have to beat any of those.
We're going to do our best. Obviously, that's our goal. That's why we're here. That's why we're training. And that's why we're going to the Olympics, is try to win the gold. We're going to do everything that we possibly can to achieve that goal.
Few will argue that it's the Chinese who could well stand in their way. An organised team with the goal-scoring prowess of Sun Wen, they are indeed formidable opponents. But the USA still feel the best is yet to come.
The Maracanã Stadium in Brazil is arguably the most famous of footballing arenas in the world, and for a long time was certainly the largest. Over recent times, it has undergone some much-needed improvements, and in January hosted the inaugural World Club Championships. This year, and the stadium is 50 years old, and fittingly, the world's greatest ever footballer was on hand to blow out the candles and lead the celebrations.
The Maracanã was important not just for my career, but I can also think of Jair, Barbosa, and so many other very skilled players that I had the opportunity of watching play here. And then during my times as a player, I've seen Zico, Rivellino, Gerson. What can I say? The Maracanã is my life.
To mark the anniversary, Pelé helped inaugurate a pavement of fame at the main entrance of the stadium. The most famous feet in football were dipped in concrete to give an everlasting monument of the man who helped make the Maracanã so renowned. Great care is taken to polish the plaques of some of the names that will always conjure up images of the great Brazilian teams from the last 50 years. Names synonymous with style, entertainment and skill. Memorabilia, including the ball with which Pelé scored his 1,000th career goal at the Maracanã, were on display at the stadium. Other guests at the ceremony included Tele Santana, Bebeto and former Brazil coach Mario Zagallo.
I witnessed the birth of the Maracanã. I used to live nearby, so I came to take a look at the construction when work was just beginning. Then, in 1950, I attended the Brazil-Uruguay game, which was a game we lost, and the whole Maracanã cried. But today is a day of happiness, a day of joy, a day to remember all people who believed in and made possible the phenomenon that the Maracanã is today.
Although it is now an all-seater stadium with a much reduced capacity, there is no doubt that the samba spirit of the Brazilians will ensure that the unique magic will remain. (1997) and the celebrations continued long into the night as Hong Kong marked their handover from British back to Chinese rule. It was to mark the beginning of a new era rather than the return to an old one. Hong Kong City is one of the most densely populated areas in the world, and life is lived at a breakneck speed. But in a place so well known for its export trade, Hong Kong has one industry that is painfully sparse: football. It's been 3 years now, so what's happened since the handover?
A lot of changes in the Hong Kong game. Basically, they've cut it from 5 foreign players now down to 3. That's one of the mainstays of what's happened in Hong Kong. I think the standard of football in Hong Kong has gone down in the past 2 or 3 years. What they're going to do next season is bring it back up to 4 or maybe 5 foreign players, so hopefully they can start getting the attendances back into Hong Kong, which have been dropping off recently.
Thanks in no small part to the gambling scandals that have recently rocked the Asian game.
When I first heard of what was going on in Malaysia, people being corrupt over the game, people taking bribes in the game, it's obviously affected Hong Kong in a way. A lot of people say, well, Hong Kong is renowned for Chinese good gamblers and what have you. But what's happened is 3 or 4 silly boys have taken the chance and unfortunately been caught by the ICAC and now paying the penalty for it. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm not too sure whether it's totally eradicated from the game, but I'm sure it maybe still goes on.
Scandals such as these have hit the Asian game hard, and Hong Kong in particular is still reeling from the aftershock.
Now the standard of the football now in the Hong Kong League is very low, I think. We need new young players, new generation young players to coming up and see what happens, because also the people don't come to the stadium, and now compared to the couple of years before.
The game may still be popular with the youngsters, but the older generations see it rather differently.
The salary in Hong Kong is now is very low, so the parents, they don't want the son to play football, not like another country.
This attitude contributes to the current weakness of the Hong Kong League.
From a personal point of view, I don't actually think that Hong Kong would have a strong enough side to actually participate in the Chinese League. As we know, the Chinese League's taken off very big, very, very strong, and they've came through in the past 2 or 3 years. But I honestly think that Hong Kong wouldn't be able to field a side against the team in the Chinese League.
The most surprising aspect of all of this is that Hong Kong, with its history under British colonial rule, were known as the pioneering force behind Asian football. They were amongst the first Asian countries to have an organised FA, and many expected that they would dominate their neighbours Japan and China in the years to follow. One look at the lineup from a recent Hong Kong League Select 11 tells its own story, though. In a side packed with foreign players, Ricky Cheng was the only outstanding and familiar face for the local fans. The Hong Kong Select 11's opponents that day were Japan and their fanatical following. The difference in class was obvious, as Japan reaffirmed their local dominance, Nakayama and Kazu pulling the strings. Hong Kong are in danger of falling further and further behind since the handover.
In the future, football in Hong Kong at the moment will go nowhere unless, coming from the Hong Kong FA downwards, you know, they need an infrastructure which will take no less than 5 years, which must be put in place. And very, very definitely we need foreign coaches to come into Hong Kong to take up from very, very youth level to take it right through to senior level. And I think the only way forward for Hong Kong is for them to do that.
So football in Hong Kong is reaching a very real crisis point. The optimism of the handover has faded. If the internal problems and national failings are to be overcome, the time to act is now.
Next week, we talk to former Tottenham favourite Steve Perryman, who's helped Shimizu S-Pulse become one of the leading club sides in Asia.
And in an age when a player's hairstyle makes almost as much news as his on-pitch skills, we visit the ultimate footballing hairdressing emporium. See you then.
World Football in association with Western Union Money Transfer.